Reg B, from a lending perspective, this is where it all begins. This is the overarching broad anti-discrimination regulation that's out there. Now, of course, that applies to all types of credit. So we're not just talking consumer credit here. It's all of your commercial lenders as well. They need to pay attention to the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. And there's a lot of specific requirements and definitions out there that can get confusing, particularly when we start talking about application dates, right? Because the vast majority of violations that you run into from a compliance perspective when we're on the lending side, typically it can be traced back to confusion around when is the application date, which application date, which regulation are we talking about? Because spoiler alert, we're going to talk about multiple definitions of application date, and they all have their own triggers that come along with them. So keeping track of which regulation are we looking at, which application date are we looking at, and understanding that our loan officers may be getting confused, especially as we're throwing all this verbiage at them. But the key one, or the very first thing, if you want to get off on the right foot in your files, you need to make sure that you are documenting your application dates. Whether it's your Reg B application date, your TRID application date, your HMDA application date, depending on the type of credit that you're looking at, those could be separate dates. So let's start with Reg B. And again, it starts with an oral or written request for credit. So, and the definition is right there in the reg. It's written request for oral or written request for credit made in accordance with the procedures that the creditor that you have, your procedures as you've got it set up. So in other words, what they're looking at is, how do credit requests come into your financial institution? I've seen some banks try to say, you know what, we only take written credit requests. And it's like, no, if you're taking credit requests over the phone, even though your procedure may say it's only an application once it's in writing, that's not how it works in the real world. Your loan officers probably get started with a telephone call, or maybe they receive email requests for credits. It needs to match up with what is actually happening at your financial institution. Now, and so when you do have that initial request for credit under Reg B, that could be a telephone call. That could be an initial conversation, and it triggers some specific regulatory requirements. The joint intent has to be documented at the time of that initial request for credit. You need to know who your applicants are right at the beginning. So that's something they should be asking on the front end. Demographic information collection under Reg B, that is also triggered at application. And then you have the 3 days, the timeline for the appraisal notice. You remember the notice that comes under Reg B is with certain types of applications, applications that are in connection with a first lien on a dwelling, the applicant is going to have a right to a copy of any appraisals or valuations that we get. And we're also supposed to give them a notice